All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. How are we doing? Yes. Yes. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. We have plenty of room right in front, and I would feel so much more loved if you guys sat closer to me. I'm looking at you, Chris. Yep. No, I'm just joking. You don't got to. Somebody, yeah, it'll be sweet. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, confession, I do YouTube for a living. Specifically, I do live streaming. And when I do live streaming, there's a chat. Okay, so it's constant feedback on what I'm talking about. What that means is I'm kind of handicapped because it would be like speaking to you guys, and 20% of you guys would be telling me what you think in real time. But I can't do that tonight. So the more engagement and feedback you guys have, we'll answer questions, the better it's going to be for me. So feel free to even interrupt, and I really mean that. It would, like, the engagement aspect would really be helpful. Okay, is that fair? Okay. A couple of things about me. I am speaking on sexual desires within singleness. I am not single. I have been married. It'll be 15 years this July. Okay. Yeah, I know. Why me, right? Why am I up here talking about this? We've been together a total of 19 years. We have 2 kids. We met in high school. We're not high school sweethearts. We started dating right after high school. Okay, so fair, discretionary, redefined print moment. Second point about me is I'm a dude. Okay? I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of a dude. I'm going to do my very best to exegete the scripture as best as we can. But I want to just forewarning, okay? So that's the perspective. Number 3 is that I am 38 years young. I know you guys are like, you look amazing. We thought you were just blending right into the whole young adults, 18 to 25. Nope, I'm 38. So what that means is that I remember a time before smartphones. I remember a time before social media. I remember a very different world when I was your guys' ages. Okay, so I don't know what it's like to be Gen Z. I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be in your guys' shoes. Okay, I all I can do is give you guys principles and not necessarily prescriptions. So what we talk about, eat the chicken, spit out the bone. Okay, if I say something you don't like, you blame your pastor. Okay, he has a very fantastic leather jacket on that I'm extremely jealous of, okay? And blame him for anything I say that could potentially get me canceled. All right? Fair warning. Okay. Are you guys ready? We're gonna get into it. You guys ready? Yeah. You guys ready? Remember the whole chat thing? Like the chat? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. Like. Give me where can you guys smash the like button real quick? Like and subscribe. Okay, so my name is Ruslan. I am originally from a little country called Azerbaijan, Baku. That is in the Middle East. It is north of Iran, and Azerbaijan, Baku used to be a part of the former Soviet Union. Okay, and I grew up only child. My mother and father are Armenians. Armenians, not Armenian like Joseph Armenian, the theology. Armenian, ethnically Armenian. Meaning that we were Armenians in a predominantly Azerbaijani and Muslim state. That created all kinds of tension because Armenia is this little small country in between Turkey and Azerbaijan, 2 big Muslim countries, powerful Muslim countries, and it goes all the way back to the Armenian genocide of 1915, which created all kinds of tensions for me and my family. And in the late 80s, my dad went to work in Moscow. My mom and me stayed behind to kind of sell the apartment and get rid of all the stuff. And long story short, we came to America as refugees because of religious persecution. Armenians are culturally Christian. We're the first Christian nation. We identify as Christian. I just went to Jerusalem a few weeks ago. There's a quarter of the old city in Jerusalem that is Armenian. Okay, there's Christian, there's Judaism quarter, and there's a Muslim quarter, and there's an Armenian quarter. So we go all the way back to thousands of years being in Jerusalem, being in this section of the world, okay? And so we came out because of religious persecution as I was 6 years old when I came to America. I didn't know the language. 6 months later, My mother and my father divorced. They split up. My dad was into my life. I got into all kinds of mischief as a kid, and I ended up getting molested as a kid by some older kids that served on the altar boy thing. So I say that to say I grew up with a very distorted perception of sex, okay? I lost my virginity at age 11, all right? Like just a train wreck of a kid. I got arrested at age 11. I lost my virginity at age 11. I got in high school, became sexually immoral. This is going to be a do as I say, not as I do talk, okay? Not as I did talk. And all of this entered into my journey with God. I got saved, I repented, and I believed, and I placed my faith in Jesus. But these issues never got dealt with. We didn't talk about therapy 20 years ago. Okay, we didn't talk about mental health 20 years ago. We didn't talk about onset PTSD 20 years ago. We didn't talk about addiction 20 years ago. We just didn't talk about these things. Sometimes you talk, but it'd be like the folks outside of the church who are like really jacked up, like they're smoking meth. Oh, we didn't talk about this stuff within the church. Okay, and so I got saved, loved Jesus, got plugged into a small group, did all of it, but I maintained this sexual immorality. Okay, manifested primarily in porn, sleeping with my girlfriend before I got saved, and then when I got saved, we stopped, and then when I met my wife, we were not all the way intimate, but we did other stuff that we shouldn't have done. Okay, fill in the blanks. Okay, so this idea of channeling your desires sexually actually came as I got older. Right, as I started dealing with my mental health, as I started dealing with my character, as I started dealing with my integrity, as I started dealing with the person I was when no one was around and it was just me, by myself, alone at night, with my thoughts, me and God. That's when I started dealing with these things. And I lived a very incongruent lifestyle. I had this thing tucked away that maybe a handful of people knew about. My wife didn't really know about it. And I personified a different image, and it hurt. It cost me a lot. It cost me intimacy in my marriage. It cost me, I would say, progression in other areas. It cost me peace of mind. The cognitive dissonance that I experienced being in this place was not good, and I don't want that for any of you. Okay, and I'm going to provide you guys with a little resource we put together at the end, but I don't want that for you guys. And so that's the framework I'm coming from, okay? So this is not I got it all figured out. Listen to I did it all wrong. I did it all wrong. I messed up, right? I dropped the ball, and it cost me inside of my marriage, okay? And so that's my story. But the good news is that Scripture is reliable. Amen? The good news is that Scripture is good for our correction. It's true even if the person that's presenting it to you guys didn't apply any of this, okay? And this talk is going to have a different twist, if you will, all right? So let's turn our Bibles to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. I'm sure you guys have been familiar with this passage. I'm reading out of the NIV, and I got 2 or 3 passages. We'll see how it goes. And I want to make sure I leave some time for Q&A, okay? Any questions so far? Chat? No. 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Okay. Has anyone ever done a deep dive study on the church in Corinth? You did? Can you give me just some things you've learned about church in Corinth? Port City, Trade Center Point, Metropolitan, sexual immorality running rampant, very spiritual, but very carnal, right? Which is kind of an oxymoron, right? They're like doing all the spiritual gifts, but then they're like doing some wild stuff. Anyone else? Corinth, church in Corinth. Yeah, our culture now is not that different. That's right. Some may even argue that Corinth was worse, right? Go ahead. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Sounds about right. That's not, yeah. So, wild, wild, wild part of the world, wild part of the scriptures. If you read through this book, you really should read through it. Um, in chapter 3, he's calling them carnal and worldly. In chapter 1, he's affirming their salvation. In chapter 3, he's calling them carnal. Okay, meaning they're fleshly. I don't know if you guys know what that word carnal means. Fleshly. They're not operating as if they're living by the Spirit. In chapter 5, this is the craziest chapter, I think, in the New Testament epistles. In chapter 5, Paul writes that there's someone in the church who's sleeping with a stepmom. Okay, or we think it's the step. Hopefully, it's a stepmom, because the alternative would be worse, right? And not only is this happening, but they're celebrating it. They're cool with it because this was someone of status, right? And Paul tells them to expel the wicked from among you, right? Hand him over to Satan so that maybe his soul will get saved. And he goes on to say, it's not our business to judge those outside of the church. We should judge those inside of the church, right? So therefore, expel the wicked from among you. Crazy chapter. If you guys want to do a fun dive, read 1 Corinthians chapter 5. It's insane. And we get to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And so he's still kind of dealing with all of these different questions. And a lot of the New Testament epistles are just that. They're churches who are getting radically saved, and then they're writing the apostles, asking them questions, and he's responding to them, to their questions. Okay? So 1 Corinthians chapter 7, I'm reading out of the the NIV, and it says, now for the matters you wrote about. It is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, but since sexual immorality is occurring, each man should have sexual relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. So here he's saying, look, sexual immorality is occurring. Therefore, how about you just keep it within your marriage? All right? Because you guys doing some freaky stuff. Just keep it within your marriage. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish that all of you were as I am. Paul was single. Some scholars believe he was perhaps widowed. We don't know. Okay, but he's saying, I'm saying this as a concession, not as a command. I wish everybody was single the way I am, but I'm not making this a command for you guys, right? Paul's saying this is my opinion here. Okay, he says, I wish that all of you were as I am, but each of you has your own gift from God. One has this gift, another has that gift. Now to the unmarried and to the widow, I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried, as do I. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion. It is better to marry than to burn with passion. There's the talk. We're done. That's it. That's it. Okay. Better to marry than, no, I'm just kidding. That's not it. Okay. So it's better to marry than to burn with passion. Meaning that many of us have desires for sex. Many of us are maybe confused by these desires. I know I was. And there was a point in time where I would pray very goofy things like, God, take away these desires. Don't pray that, okay? God desired us with a propensity to become one with someone. God designed us with a propensity to procreate. God designed us with the opportunity to experience this amazing blessing, this amazing gift of intimacy. He designed us that way. But if you've been in the trenches like I have, if you've been struggling like I have, you know what it's like to be burning with lust and not know what to do and how to channel that. How do I channel this into something productive? How do I channel this into something that's not self-destructive? How do I channel this into something that's not going to have that little skeleton in the closet that I hope nobody knows about? Or worse, hookup culture, right? Having a whole nother life where you're being promiscuous and you're living a double reality, right? How do I channel this in a way where I'm not burning with passion, but I'm channeling passion into something that's meaningful? And this is extremely difficult, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is the tension that we live in. This is the tension that we live in today with stuff like Tinder and all kinds of other apps that are out there. This is the tension that we live in with access to porn at the click of a button on your phone. I didn't have this, right? Like, I didn't have this growing up. You guys are facing different challenges. But I do know that if the principle is, hey, don't burn with lust, instead, get married, my mind goes to, if you desire to get married, because you're burning with lust, how do we channel that energy, that passion, that's good, that desire in you, it's good, even though some of us have perverted it, even though some of us have became addicted to porn, even though some of us have been sexually assaulted, abused, that foundational desire is good. You guys with me so far? You're wired for intimacy. You're wired to be one with someone. You're wired for that. That is good, okay? And the world has taken that and has perverted it. We've taken that and perverted it. The enemy has taken that and perverted it. But the underlying desire is good. And so how do we take young adults and we say, okay, people are burning with lust, some of them have passion, that's a good desire. How do we redirect that and channel that into something more productive, into something more healthy, into something that can actually get you further along to hopefully be married? How many people want to be married in here? Okay, sweet. Almost every single hand went up. Okay, how many of you guys are married in here? Okay, respect. Thanks for being here. Yeah, dope. So how do we take you out of the lane of, man, I would like to be married, but I'm not capable of being married right now, okay? And this is how I would describe it. I had a word for my family this year. This is a word, we sat down around Christmas time, and I had like a vision, and I'll share it with you guys, okay? And it was very simple. Sometimes we want to go from being dysfunctional, okay, to flourishing. I was struggling with all kinds of issues, and I thought that if I got married, everything would magically vanish, and I would be happily married and telling everyone about the amazing sex life I was going to have. I wanted to go from dysfunctional to flourishing. But see, there's a step that we all miss. Before you go from dysfunctional to flourishing, you know what you first got to become? Functional. A functional, stable human. Someone that lets their yes be yes and their no be no. Someone that's doesn't freak out when life throws them a curveball and they have a meltdown. Someone that knows how to keep their emotions in check. It's not that you don't feel things, it's that you know how to practice stoicism and be restrained. Someone that is functional is adding value to others. Someone that is functional is loving people well. Someone that is functional has boundaries with some of those toxic friends and family members you have, with some of those apps that you know you shouldn't be on, with some of those circles you know you shouldn't be on. So how do we go from being dysfunctional, a perverted view of sex, a perverted view of intimacy, to functional so that we could someday get to flourishing? Turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. You started smiling. I'm guessing you like this verse. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. This is Paul writing again, the church in Thessalonica. I'm in the NIV. We're going to go to the Greek here in a minute, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to do some Q&A. So this is Paul. I'll pick up in verse 9, and the emphasis of this will mainly be in verse 11 and 12. Paul writes, he says, "Now about your love for one another, we do not need to write to you, for you yourselves have been taught by God to love each other. And in fact, you do all of God's family throughout Macedonia. You do love all of God's family throughout Macedonia. We urge you, brothers and sisters, to do so more and more, and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. So the context of this is, hey, you guys love one another. You're supporting these other churches. We need you to do more. We need you to do more. And he says, you know how to love, but this is what I want you to do. He says, make it your ambition. That word ambition is a fascinating word to me. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, and so that you will not be dependent on anyone. Okay, there's a whole lot here, but I want to break down just word ambition real quick for you guys. Okay, the Greek here is philat, I don't know how to say it, but philat amanoi. It's a verb. It means to be fond of honor, to be activated by love of honor, okay, to be ambitious, to strive earnestly, make it one's aim. So make it your aim to what? To lead a quiet life, not be a chatty patty, okay? Not be someone that drama constantly surrounds, okay? Make it your aim to lead a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work with your own hands. You should have skills that are valuable to other people so that you don't have to be dependent on others. Okay, that's what that last verse here. And it says, in doing all this, your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, right? Your daily life may win the respect of outsiders. So that word ambition is used 3 other times in the New Testament. It's used in Romans 15:12. It says, it has always been my ambition to preach the gospel where Christ was not known. Okay, 2 Corinthians, so make it our goal to please him, whether we are at home or in the body away from it, and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. So 2 out of the 3 times it's about preaching the gospel or knowing Jesus. The 3rd time is how do we stand in relationship with other people? How do we set a good example for outsiders? How do we lead our lives in a way that we're not dependent on other people? And I think this is the unlock. See, I think this is the actual part that's missing for many of us. We want that, oh, I'm dysfunctional, I want to go to flourishing, but the way to go there is we first have to become functional, which means we first have to learn how to work with our own hands. We first have to learn how to be valuable to other people. We first have to learn how to treat others well, to love others well. We first have to learn how to be an asset and not someone that drains resource. Are you becoming an asset in your circle? Are you becoming an asset with your friend group? Are you becoming someone that people can depend on? Or are you becoming someone that walks in a room, Debbie Downer, zaps the energy, and then just kind of throws up on everyone and leaves? We all know people like that, right? And so we channel our sexual desires into getting to a place where we can be more functional through serving others, through loving others, through learning to work with your own hands, through developing scarce skills, through learning how to manage money, learning how to manage your sleep, learning how to manage your mood and regulate your emotions. The more stable you become, the more attractive you become to the right type of people that you want to actually get married to, okay? You don't want to get married out of a place of desperation and out of a place of dysfunction. You want to get married from a place of stability, of being firm. Not being perfect, but being firm, being rooted, being a solid individual, being someone that people can depend on. In Luke chapter 9, this is the dispute that breaks out with the disciples. And they're arguing amongst each other about who is the greatest. Who's the greatest? Oddly enough, the same dispute breaks out again in Luke chapter 22. This is towards the end of Jesus' ministry, okay? So we know in the book of Luke, this happens at least twice. This may have happened other places in terms, like, I don't know how many times they had this argument. Who's the greatest in the kingdom, right? Remember, they're expecting a political kingdom. They're expecting a military Messiah, all right? And they have this conflict, this tension about who is the greatest. And Jesus did something interesting, right? And by the greatest, they're exhibiting ambition. They're exhibiting a desire to be great. verse 22. Luke 22, verse 24. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. Jesus said to them, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them called themselves benefactor. So in the world, people lord over each other. They call it leverage. They call it good leadership, right? Jesus says, but you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? It is not the one who is at the table, but I am among you as the one who serves. Jesus sees their ambition, sees their desire to be great, and he doesn't rebuke them. Remember when Peter tried to get in the way of God's plan? What did Jesus do? He rebuked him. Get behind thee, Satan. These guys are arguing about who's the greatest, and Jesus doesn't rebuke them. He redirects them. He redirects them and says, that ambition you have, we have to redirect that. And what does he redirect it to? Service, serving others, servant leadership. As someone that comes from a single parent home, without my dad in my picture, with all kinds of emotional issues, I found so much solace in serving in a local church because it exposed me to people I had never met that were not like me, that were different with their political persuasion, with their worldview. It allowed me to try things that I would have never tried, like working on cameras, like doing music, like running sound, like serving kids. I still serve kids. I'm in the 3 and under room till this day. I love it. It allowed me to anchor myself and express my faith in a way of genuinely serving. And also, it was a massive upside, and I didn't expect it to be. I built relationships. I developed scarce skills. I was able to go on staff at my church. And all of those same things that I did out of service, because why not? I'm not doing anything else. I might as well serve my church, are the very same skills that position me to do what I'm doing right now on YouTube. That position me to go from having a really rough emotional state to being stable, because I had to learn how to deal with people. That positioned me to go from being broke financially, like really, really struggling. Like my first year of marriage, we lived with my mom. Like that's an L. Okay? To now we've transitioned and we're running a multi-six-figure media company. Because I said, if I want to have ambition, if I want to do something great for God, I have to first learn how to serve. And here's the thing. You getting stable and you getting functional is actually the most direct path to you becoming the type of person that's going to be married, that's going to be a stable husband, a stable father, a stable wife, a stable mother, a good friend. You becoming stable is the most direct path. And you know what you can do with all of that sexual energy? You could channel that into becoming the type of person that God has called you to be. All of that pent up frustration, and why, Lord, take these desires, go learn a skill. You can learn almost any skill in 20 hours. Did you know that? 20 hours of deliberate focus, you could pick up almost anything. Go learn a skill. Go serve some kids. You're not good with people? Great. Go serve some babies. That'll humble you real quick. I'm struggling. I can't make any money. Okay, figure out how to do some other skills. Figure out how to sell. Figure out how to do something with code. Figure out how to do something with technology. Figure out how to do something with storytelling. You know what the cool part about that? You guys could do that here. You guys could learn that stuff here and serve your church at the same time. That's a win-win. I'm not saying go serve in your church to benefit from it. I'm saying serve, and it just so happened to work out for me in that way. Principles, not prescriptions, okay? I'm giving you guys principles, not prescriptions. So as we're trying to figure this whole thing out, all of those things that I told you guys about, the porn, the dysfunction in my sexual view of all of it, it followed me into my marriage. But you know something happened is the more stable I became, the more these things got checked. The more functional, the more I worked on my mental health and started seeing a therapist, the more I worked on my physical health and lost some weight, the more I started earning more money, all of these things fell into place. My wife, this is going to sound crazy to some of you guys, okay? Buckle up. You guys ready? I went from a guy who was addicted to porn as someone that's married. That's so embarrassing for me to tell you guys. To my wife saying, hey, honey, I think we should have a weekly calendar of the times we're intimate. Why? Because I became a stable person that she trusted in a marriage, that was providing for her, that was making our home something that she could feel comfortable in. And guess what? The intimacy was like, of course I want to be intimate with my husband. And she suggested that. And so before I left here today, I said, hey, honey, just want to make sure we're sticking on the schedule tonight. No, I'm joking. Are you guys tracking with me? I know this stuff's uncomfortable to talk about, right? I know this stuff's uncomfortable to talk about. But I want to say one last thing. Men, ladies, just cover your ears for this part, okay? No, don't cover your ears for this part. They did a survey. Men, this is going to sting. You guys ready? Ladies, you may not like me after this. Men, they did a study recently, and they found out that 56% of women who work and have kids would have preferred to stay home had they been given the option to. I'll say that again. 56% of women who work full-time and have kids 18 and under would have preferred to stay home with their babies had they been given the option to. Not Christian women, not conservative women, just women in general of the population. Okay, 56% would have preferred to stay home had they been given the option to. You were the head. You were the head of your household. Figure it out. Develop yourself. Work on these things now. Channel that energy now. Okay? The world is going to distract you. Your friends are going to tempt you. The enemy is going to attack you, but you need to be prepared for the new world that we're living in and how hard it is, and develop yourself now. If you can develop yourself now, you're going to be in a much better place, and you're not going to be dealing with the stuff I had to deal with for the first couple of years of my marriage. Okay? Did that sting? Did that hurt? A little bit? Somebody like, no. Okay. Questions? Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Sure. Wow. I've never heard of this before in my life. I'm respect. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. That's amazing. Two additional resources. We have a free course that I put together with my Christian therapist. Okay, if you're struggling with addiction, mastermyhabits.com. It's all about freedom forming habits. So if you guys want to, it's free, it's private, there's no upsell. Mastermyhabits.com. Second thing, last tip, if you're struggling with self control, this is going to sound super bizarre. Just try it. Okay, broccoli. Broccoli elevates your leptin levels. Your leptin levels is what makes you feel satiated and feel like you're in control. I eat about 4 cups of broccoli a day. It's amazing. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Two. Go ahead. I do. I have a 8-year-old and a 2-year-old. We homeschool them. We have them in a bubble. No, I'm kidding. We do homeschool them, and we curate their experience online. We curate the experience with their friends. We're very intentional, we're very engaged. And I do a lot of stuff with them. So like whatever my son is into, I'm into right now, I'm into Pokemon. Yeah. No, definitely not public school. No, I mean, I got friends, kids in public school, and it's wild, dude. 8, 9 years old, trans, all kinds of wild stuff that they're being exposed to that like we're slowly having conversations. But no, I don't think we'll ever do public. Maybe charter. Maybe charter. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, your willpower depletes throughout the day. You're told this is why you're more likely to look at porn at night than you are in the morning, right? It's why you're more likely to binge eat at night than you are in the morning. So again, dude, I'm married. I worked through this while being married. I just started going to bed when my wife goes to bed. So like 9:30, like I'm an old geezer, bro. Like 9:30, we have the iPad pulled up. We're watching our little Netflix shows. My baby is nursing, and then we go to bed like super early. So I think go to bed early, and how I started doing that is I just started waking up earlier. So I just like suffered through like a day or two of like 6 a.m. up, getting somewhere, doing something. For me, it was the gym, and that was kind of the unlock. So I would say if you can go to bed early, and you can regulate your own willpower, like self control is a fruit of the spirit, but God also gives us a mind and a brain to understand that like yo, the later you stay up, the more likely you are to do stupid stuff. So just don't stay up as late, right? And it's chemical too, kremlin, leptin, like there's all these hormones that are happening in your body as well that we can go deep on that. Any one last question before we wrap? Go ahead. Yeah. Yes. Like sexually or like just a date? Okay. Principles, not prescripts. Okay, this is not a like absolute dogmatic statement, right? Just my opinion. We dated for 4 years before we got married. I don't think that was wise, right? I don't think that was wise. So again, how can we get you stable enough to get you in a position where you can be married sooner, right? That would be my principle based advice. So that you're not dating for 5 years and you're like, dude, it's so hard to not have. Yeah, because you weren't wired to be intimate with someone for 5 years and not be intimate. Hello, right? Like, you guys got to remember, like 200, 300 years ago, people were getting married at 18, 19 years old. And now they're like, yeah, adolescence, you're an adolescent till you're 30. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Your biology is just not that. So, how do we get you to, and again, I'm not saying go out and get married at 18, 19 years old. Like, I'm not saying that either. Okay? Principles, not prescriptions. Okay? Do you have a question? Hmm. Yep. Yeah, a buddy of mine named John Acuff. If you're dealing with intrusive thoughts, read this book. Read this book, Soundtracks by John Acuff. John Acuff is an amazing author. He's one of my favorite authors, and he happens to be a friend. He wrote this book called Soundtracks, and it's literally about that, and it's basically changing your soundtracks and filling your brain with better soundtracks. It's not no weird new age manifestation stuff. It's about just changing what you're playing and what you're allowing and what you're meditating in, and he has a whole system on it. You guys get the Audible version of it. Soundtracks by John Acuff. It's a really, really, really good book. Like it's an amazing book, and there's exercises in there. There's all kinds of stuff in there. So I would rewire your soundtracks. There are certain soundtracks that you have that you need to remove, and then there's other things you need to fill. So my morning starts with gospel music, like gospel music, loud on the way to the gym. Fred Hammond. We're blessed in the city. We're blessed in the field. And I'm programming my mind with the right soundtracks. So I would say, yeah, check out Soundtracks by John Acuff. All right, guys. Thank you, guys. I'll be hanging out if you guys got any other questions or anything you want to chat about. Appreciate you.